I'm Tom Rogers. If you are watching this, I can almost say good to see you again, even though I don't get to see you, because we would have been together at the PE Academy where we talked about, among other things, communication. And you remember it was a crazy day, we didn't have enough time to do everything. There's one thing as a part of the communication piece of our time together that I really would have liked to have talked to you about then. We just didn't have the time, but we've got the time now. And that's a topic called the ladder of inference. Now you might remember at the Academy, we kind of joked about how with communication, can it be perfect, can it be easy? And I just said there's no magic pills for that. Well, there are no magic pills for that, but what we're about to look at with this ladder of inference, it's about as close to magic pills as it gets. So a little bit of a setup on this. First of all, I want to show it to you. I want to be able to have a sense of how it works conceptually and then how you might be able to use it. So let's put it up here. It's called the ladder of inference. If we want to give credit where credit's due, a guy by the name of Peter Senge. Many people worked on it. He gets the credit. Usually most of the people quote Senge. It's a situation where you think about how it is that we get to what we believe in and what we do. In a given day, and it's not on the ladder yet, but think about it, all day long, what happens? You get hit with a gazillion pieces of data. Like right now I'm talking to you, so you're seeing me, you're hearing me, but also there's light coming at you. If you're sitting down, you can feel the chair. Is it comfortable? Is it not comfortable? We get all these impressions, all this data. At the end of the day, most of it, my gosh, there's just too much, it's gone. But certain data we decide to hang on to, that we select it. It's kind of like there's a recorder and that's what we remember that people said and did. So at the bottom of this ladder you see it says selected data. That's what it's talking about. Now from that data we then give meaning to it, and from that meaning we draw assumptions, and out of those assumptions come our conclusions, which lead to beliefs, and finally that's what causes us to do what it is that we do, the actions that we have. Now if you think back to the communication day, let's put a slide up there. You remember how we talked about that there's always distortion? You've got an idea and you want to give it to the other person and they get not quite the same thing. But the real key is, why is it not the same? It's because of all those filters, all those, and this is actually what we're talking about, all those assumptions, all those different meanings, all the beliefs, all of those function as filters, so that the ladder of inference is going to help us be able to look at this and say, okay, how could we clean this up a little bit? So going back to the ladder, let me give you, it's very abstract right now, let me give you a concrete example of how this could play out. It's kind of a silly one, but yeah, it gives you an idea. Let's assume you've got somebody that works for you. I don't know, let's call him Leonard, all right? Leonard either comes to work on time or doesn't. That's data that's out there. But you happen to notice and select and remember that for 2 days in a row, he comes late. Not just a little late, he comes 45 minutes late. Okay, that's the data. The meaning you give to that is, whoa, well, that's not much of a work ethic. The assumption, going further up the ladder, he's probably been doing this all the time. I'm just now noticing. The conclusion, my gosh, probably not just a bad work ethic, probably bad work. The belief, he's dragging down the team. The action, well, I can't have this, got to write him up, maybe get him fired. Well, it's Caltrans, maybe transferred. I don't know, maybe promoted. Kidding. But what if you were wanting to go down this ladder and you said to Leonard, I noticed, guy, 45 minutes late today and yesterday. And what's Leonard say? He might say, yeah, boss, I'm sorry about that. You know, it's this car that I've got. It's just breaking down all the time. It's got about 329,000 miles on it. And oh, this is new meaning. And it might change the assumption that you draw from that. You can go, oh yeah, that's right, Leonard, he's the one whose wife's mom is having that breast cancer treatment and they're giving all the money to help her pay for that. He probably can't afford anything better. What's then the conclusion that you draw? I mean, here's somebody who, in fact, trying to balance work and at the same time a family crisis. The belief is, if anybody ever needed a break, it's Leonard. The action, maybe I could get this guy some overtime. Silly, I understand. But think about it. There is a way in which, even though it's a jokeable example, that the things that happened in that example, going down and up that ladder, That's how it really, really does happen. Now, the ladder's a good thing. If you want to have great actions, if we pay attention to going up the steps, it works well. The problem is it doesn't always work well because we're not paying attention to it. Here's 3 things that get screwed up. First one, that we sometimes go up fast. And I mean like a skyrocket. You go up that ladder from the data to the action in a nanosecond. We don't even think about it. It's just a reflex. And when people that have studied where are effective organizations having people spend time on the ladder, so in other words, they go to businesses, to government organizations, and they say, the ones that are really producing, where, and they analyze where in conversations are people on that ladder. And the majority of people in the ones that are not effective are way up at the top. Actions and belief. That's where they're spending most of the time. So that's one problem. We go up the ladder and we just, this is what I believe, let's do it. It's too fast. The second one is that sometimes we get stuck. Now, some of you might have somebody that you work with or that works for you. They take, 20 minutes to say something that most people could say in 15 seconds. Analyze it. Where is it on that ladder that they're spending the time in that conversation? My hunch would be that it's in the data. It's just like they're stuck there. Well, then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then Bob said this, and then I did this, and we need to get them up the ladder. But there's not efficiency because too much time is being wasted there. Third thing that we sometimes do is that we cycle. I don't know how well you can see this in the slide, but it shows that when you get up to the belief, that sometimes it's called the reflexive loop, that we come down to that having an impact and affecting the next set of data that we come into, which limits us being able to have a wide variety of data that we wouldn't otherwise have unless we're intentionally making sure that we don't just listen to the things that we're used to listening to and believe to be the truth. So, those 3 things get in the way. I mentioned magic pills. The way to get rid of these things is to take the magic pill, and the magic pill is nothing other than asking questions with the ladder in mind. Now see, I would argue that in every question there is what we could call a quest. In other words, every question takes the person receiving the question either up the ladder or down the ladder. And I'd like to give you a chance to experiment with this a little bit for me. So when you in fact are using the ladder, it's to plan the quest of the question. Do I need to take the person up or down the ladder? So let's use an example here of, let's say, how would you defend that position? In asking that question, are you inviting the person you're talking to go up the ladder or down the ladder? Now, if you're watching this with some other people, you might want to put this on pause right now. See if you can agree, or even if you're watching it by yourself. If you want to put this on pause, decide, do you think it's going up or going down? I'll wait for you. And sure enough, I'm still here. Do you think it goes up or down? I think there's a case to be made to say that in a question on defend, it's going down. Think about it. They're at the belief. How would you defend that belief? In other words, what data are you looking at? How have you interpreted the data? What meaning are you giving to it? How about, though, if you asked a question like, Judge, how would you, based on this information, what judgment would you make? Up or down? I would suggest this is one that's taking us up. This is for those long talkers. They're down there in the data. Well, make a judgment. Get up. Have an opinion about something. Draw a conclusion. How about if, in fact, you're asking somebody, what would you predict? That kind of a question. I would say that also is getting them up the ladder. How about if it's a question like, well, how would you justify that? Down again. Being able to say, what's your data? What is the meaning that's behind that that would cause you to believe that? Magic pills, I'm going to suggest you take 2. One is how you would use this, the questions around this ladder, understanding how this ladder works. You give one pill in terms of asking questions to others, and the other pill has to do with how we in fact ask questions of ourselves. So let's think about with others. We've already given an example here of being able to do it, what it would mean. What would it look like with your team? Could you, in fact, envision that in a team meeting you might want to say, all right, so put the ladder up on the board, show them a picture of it, and say, what data are we maybe not looking at? What's the meaning here that could be a meaning, but we haven't even thought about it yet? What assumptions are we making that are incorrect? The assumptions one is huge. To be able to use the ladder when you're working with your team, to be able to say, okay, let's just literally, believe it or not, literally write the assumption down that we're making and then ask a question. Is it a real assumption? And it might be. Maybe it's a law. Maybe it's a regulation. But if it's a bad law or regulation, maybe it needs to be changed. Or maybe the assumption is not real. It's just a habit. It's the way we've always done things. Or maybe the assumption is outdated. I was talking to a Caltrans exec a few years ago. He said, Tom, he said I could quote him, just can't name him. He said that a lot, and he said more than you can imagine, number of regulations that we have now in the department, they were made 50, 60 years ago. They made a lot of sense then. Now, so being able to use the ladder would maybe get us to even asking those kind of questions. So the pill for them, but also using the ladder, ask questions for yourself. When I have presented this ladder of inference to other people that have come to other academies, the ones who really got it, the ones who made the most of it, would email me back and say, Tom, thank you. You know where my ladder of inference is? They'd say, it's right by my computer, or it's by the door on my way out, so that I remind myself all the time. And when I'm trying to make a decision, come to a belief, take an action, that I stop and I say, okay, what do I need to do in terms of looking at different data? What meaning am I giving? What assumptions am I making? And they say, this is what I do. That I look at an empty chair in the room and I say, if there was somebody here that knew how to use this ladder, what questions would they be asking me? And then they ask themselves that same question. Pretty cool. So this has such huge potential to really be an effective way to improve communication. You know, the old joke is, go to the doctor and the doctor really doesn't take you seriously. He just says, well, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. Well, spinning off that joke, I would say take 2 pills, 2 magic pills. Take 1, ask questions of other people, and take a second pill, ask questions of yourself. And you don't need to call Dr. Tom. If you do that, I guarantee this is going to rock your world. Wish you well with it.